Shanthi ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Would you be able to adjust your screen, please? Because we can't see you fully.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
No, ma'am, we cannot see you at all. Can you adjust? We are just seeing the background, that mirror and
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, the light is not correct.
We can just see your forehead actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just now only I noticed. Sorry.
Is that better?
No.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Little more. Little more.
Oh, okay.
Further,
I
further.
didn't realize. I thought it
Yeah.
was good before.
Might
I tried it.
be your yes, perfect. Now we
Okay.
can. Oh no, no again.
Okay.
Yes,
I
good
think,
enough.
I think you are a swimming chair.
Great, ma'am. That's nice. That's great. Thank you.
Chair is not stable. That's the problem.
No, now it's great. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, now we can see you perfect. Great.
Nikita? Nikita? Akhila,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
we can start.
Welcome all to our 47th Intersociety weekly webinar series. You can see we are already reached 47th, and in shortly, in another 5 weeks, we'll be completing 1 year of this online series of our weekly Wednesday talks that we used to have. So a warm welcome. Before we proceed to today's sessions, I'll just give you a few ground rules for all our participants. Please make sure that your microphones are always remaining on muted. All participants, except for the speakers, are requested to turn off your videos so as to conserve bandwidth. If you have any questions, request you to kindly type in the chat window anytime during the program, and we'll be reading out to our moderator. We'll be reading out this at the end of the session. If you have any technical queries also, please do type in the chat window. We'll be giving you necessary guidance for that. Now, let us coming on to the next part. I'm so happy to welcome everyone, and today's session is, as always, a totally new one for all of us. We have all heard about smart cities, and we know it is about connected offices, vehicles, drones, augmented reality, and next-gen communication networks. We can imagine how it will all be contributing to a context-sensitive collaboration. And this, of course, gives rise to public safety operations, which will have access to data and video from all these locations. Effective collaboration needs a shared context that will be made possible through the seamless sharing of situational awareness data. The availability of enriched data sets the stage for the development of AI enhancements. This can help to predict and prevent incidents and reduce the impact of incidents significantly when they do occur. In today's session, Mrs. Shanthi Ravindran will be giving us insights on mission critical intelligence for public safety. Now, I welcome Professor Jayashree Santosh, former IIT Delhi and University of Malaya KL, to introduce the speaker of the day. Ma'am, please.
Good evening, all of you. I am here to introduce today's eminent speaker, Shanthi Ravindran. And since the fact of the talk and a short biography of the speaker is already given, I'm not going to talk about it. But I wish to talk about Shanthi as a person whom I know as a close friend, as a colleague, and as a person with whom we in a group daily interact, even if it is on one-line messages. So actually I'm very happy and thrilled to do this job to introduce Shanthi. Well, we all did our basic engineering degree together at CET and then later moved out to the world of technology in our own chosen area. And Shanthi is one among us who have excelled in her area of telecommunication, as you all can see in her biodata. She has an excellent hold in her professional work, no doubt, but I wish to talk to you about the other side of Shanthi, whom I know as a person. Um, Shanthi has a very loving and caring nature, not only to the humans around, but I must say she's a great nature lover. And this was quite evident from the cute pictures that she posts whenever she's on tour, whether it is professional or personal. I still remember a picture that she posted about a very tiny, cute, little seashell which was lying on a seabed. And she, with equal poise, she posted big daffodils and small fancy flowers. She posts about a tiny bird which comes to her balcony almost daily, frequently. And on her morning walk, she captures things which she called in Malayalam Manjadi Kuru and Kupipacha, etc., which I think as kids we enjoyed a lot. So these are the things which I think are very appreciative of her as a avid nature lover. And another thing I have noticed that she has got extremely very good multitasking capability, and I think as a woman I can boast about it. So these are the two things apart from her professional excellence I have noticed. And coming to technology, I think we are at a time where 4G, 5G spectrum, networking, telecommunication, IoTs, machine learning, artificial intelligence, data science, data analysis, all this have become very common usage even in school children. And application of technology in public safety needs an excellent planning, design, and implementation. And for today's talk, I'm sure Shanthi is one ideal person since she has got an over 30 years of experience in the field of planning, implementing, and operation of wireless and telecommunication software. So with great pleasure, and privilege, I introduce Shanthi to today's topic, the mission critical intelligence for public safety. And I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. So over to you all for the excellent talk with Shanthi.
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing the speaker of the day. Shanthi, ma'am, we are now eager to hear you.
Thank you. Let me switch to my presentation. Give me a minute. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let me get to the presentation. But before that, I want to thank Harindra for this great opportunity and Akila and Jayashri for a very nice introduction. My interest in this topic is because of course, I had the fortune to work in this area, but also I feel it's a very important area that is gaining importance in the recent past because of many incidents. And we, in the industry, we have a responsibility to make sure that the people who put themselves at the forefront in saving and keeping us safe we need to keep them safe as well. So that's what we work on, software and solutions to put in front of in the hands of our law enforcement officers when they go out to keep us safe. But before that, of course, I have put in a lot of words in my presentation, which are buzzwords in the industry. But before that, I want to share with you a few keywords that are human, which has links to technology. The word artificial intelligence means it's artificial, right? So, but it is something that is modeled on humans, we know that. What happens in recent years is that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. Jayashree talked about multitasking. We are always multitasking, and when we are multitasking, we are context switching in between all this information, and we are drowning in information. So that's what this balance here shows. The more and more data that comes in front of our eyes and ears, the more our attention starts slacking. And that's when we need AI to sort of tilt the balance in our favor. But what exactly is this AI attempting to do? That's where I want to bring in this word situational awareness and mental models. These words are not new. Artificial intelligence itself has its roots in this Nobel laureate's work. But situational awareness and mental models have been around since the 80s, and they come from the military world, which is where collaboration is very essential. Situational awareness refers to an understanding of the situation, a perception of the situation, what is happening in the situation, what's happening around us, an understanding of the situation, and an action to be taken out of it, or a prediction of what's going to happen. And we do this based on mental models. So what is this mental model that we are talking about? Let me give you an example. In 2010, there was a flight, QF32, that took off from Singapore, Changi Airport. I live in Singapore, so I remember this quite vividly. It took off from Singapore Airport. It was a brand new A380 Qantas aircraft. And within a few minutes, there were huge amount of failures, engine failures, fuel failures, etc. The captain, he was a military trained pilot. He handled the plane in a way that was critical to saving all the lives of those people. So what he saw is that a lot of failures, the wing, engine failure, what this failed. So his assistant pilots reeled off all the failures. And then this guy said, don't tell me what's not working, tell me what's working. So they said there's one engine that's working, the brakes are working, the fuel system is still working to that engine. So this guy, he says at that point, he shifted his mental model of how he should land the plane. So till then he was thinking he should land an A380, right, which has a lot of instrumentation around it. Then he shifted and said, okay, I only have my brakes and I'm going to land it like a Cessna. A Cessna is a single engine aircraft which only has the engine and brakes. So he literally brought the plane in, ignored all the warnings that came from his instrument panels, which told him to stall. He pressed his brakes down and he landed. He just kept his brakes down as much as he could because he knew he could use his brakes only once. And he landed the plane, saved all the people, came to rest within 100 meters from the end of the runway. So what he did in that instant is he looked at all the information around him and he created a mental model for himself that would work. He changed his mental model that would to something that would work. And that is what technology is able to do at this point. It is able to make sense of all this information and help the human being to create this mental model. It's not technology for the sake of technology, we just put all the information in front of the human being and tell him, do whatever you want with it. It's not that. The technology must make sense and it must help him create the mental model. I want to give you one more example, which is a very human example. There is this example in a book by the US Surgeon General. So what he talks about is babies in a premature babies in an intensive care unit, where they have all kinds of gauges and machines attached to them to make sure they are doing okay. So there was this baby who seemed to be doing okay to all external occurrences. But the nurse and the nurse who was sitting beside said, the baby's okay. But then the nurse who came by, the more experienced one, said there's something wrong with the baby, and she went to the doctor and asked for antibiotics for the baby. It turns out that the baby was in an advanced stage of sepsis and would have died if she had not asked for the antibiotics. Again, they asked her, what is it that made you do that? Because all the gauges said everything is okay. She said, when I looked at the baby, the skin looked a tiny bit mottled, reddish. And that meant that that is not the mental model of a well baby that she carried in her mind. So all the information, why I give you this example is because all the technology that we create is not for the sake of technology alone. It is for the creation of these mental models or cues for human beings to take action, because the human being will remain at the center of action for a long time. Whatever artificial intelligence we create, we are going to be the center of action for a long time. So keep that in the mental model in our mind, and that helps us a lot in our personal experiences as well. If you can read this book, it is by this author called Richard Duhigg, Duhigg, where he talks about this how to act smarter, faster. Let me go into the technology itself now. So our job is to create this mental model for human beings to work on, right? So what is it that human beings can do well? What is it that we can't do well? First, we are not good at monotonous tasks. The more and more we keep doing the same tasks, we get bored and we don't even see unusual things happening. But machines are very good at that. If you program the machines, they can now, and train the AI, it can now recognize very simple anomalies. So that is what machines can do. Second thing that they can do is we are very good at verification and understanding. But the understanding comes only with experience. And jobs are, people leave jobs and go to different jobs so fast, turnover is very high. So it's very difficult to get expertise. Again, machines can help in this as long as you go to a higher level of semantics and program the AI to understand the nature of the anomaly. For example, if you perceive that there is a car going over a sidewalk, the machine must be able to know that what is a car, what is a sidewalk, and that it should not go over a sidewalk. So that kind of programming needs to be done to recognize and understand what it's perceiving. The last one is what I talked about earlier, the mental models. Humans are very good at following an action plan, and we are very good at collaborating with other human beings. In fact, the more we collaborate, the better we are in any situation. So machines can assist human beings in dealing with this workload by putting in front of them. Many of us are software engineers. The software has to have certain qualities when it comes to saving life. The UI UX design is very critical. For example, when I first joined Motorola, they showed me this radio set that police use. It has an antenna, it has an emergency button. So they said, the way the emergency button is situated next to the antenna, the policeman can can slide his hand down the antenna and reach the emergency button. So that is user experience design. Design becomes very critical even in software. We all know that the UI UX in software can make or break the software. So that becomes critical. The way the software places information, the way the connectivity works becomes critical as well. We need to connect to various things, and nowadays 4G, 5G, everything is available. But how we bring it all together is where we can get the outcome we want. So again, when I refer to the public safety industry, I'm referring to police, fire, ambulance, and all the law enforcement agencies that keep us safe. We know that the threats are becoming very complex. There are multiple things can happen at the same time, like the Mumbai attacks happened. And what we need at our responses have to have the same impact, right? Only then we can save lives. Criminals have in their hand various bits of technologies, and it's up to us to go one step higher and place technology in the hands of our first responders to make this
I really want to
happen.
know, no, where's the people?
Hello? Yeah. So Motorola is providing radio communication systems as well as software in this area, and that's why I had the chance to work on such systems. So why is it so difficult? I mean, we have huge networks, we have huge telecom networks, we have huge software centers, we have brilliant contact centers, right? Call centers, industry is huge. It's all in the commercial space. Why is it that it is difficult? Of course, governments are dealing with realities, funding, everything is slow, and they have their own processes of changing systems, right? But the challenge is that the cities are becoming larger and larger. Cyber crime happens all the time, and the incidents are costlier. But there are also opportunities because cameras and sensors are easier to place given that communication technologies are there. Hardware behaves more like software because these cameras now have inbuilt sensors and software, and incidents can be predicted. So we have a lot of data that we can use to predict these incidents, but again, there is a lot of problems around accessing the data, the privacy, ethics, etc., that we need to deal with. But these are opportunities for making this better world. So what is it that we want to make happen in this industry? A lot of things we have always done manually, and we know that when the amount of data that is coming in front of the human being becomes more and more, we are faced with this deluge of data, and we need the help of software to make sense of this. So what we're trying to do is that in between an incident and the police or the fire ambulance people arriving on the scene, we want to make the response time interval very, very small. A lot of countries have KPIs around it, 7 seconds, 18 seconds. And the other thing that we also want to do is we want to be able to predict the event. Nowadays, there are a lot of things happening on social media. Advertising agencies are at the forefront of AI. I listened to a talk on one of these webinars the other day, which said that in advertising also, they are building these models in the commercial space as well. They are building these models to understand how the consumer behaves and how to sell more. So why can't we bring all those technology to our benefit, right? So we should be able to predict and prevent these incidents as well. That's what we are looking to enable. So what is it that technology can actually provide, given all this talk about situational awareness? Technology can get us access to all the information. First and foremost, the networks that can get us access to all this information. We all use Wi-Fi, we all use 4G LTE. There are more IoT networks coming up. There are location tracking technologies. Google is very good at that. Google can track locations, track people across the whole world through just their Wi-Fi systems, right? So we can use that information. About this networks, the the problem that we face is because of the multitude of these networks, the service layer becomes very disjointed, and we don't know what service we can get out of which network. So we need to build this service layer fairly compartmentalized and able to provide these services. And in the end, we are getting the situational awareness picture that makes us create our mental models and use the cues to create the actions that we need. So what are the technology enablers that we are seeing, and why do we think that the time is ripe for something to happen? Because a lot of things seem to be coming together. Of course, they are all coming in either from the commercial space or from the military space, but these things are coming in. The first thing that matured, you can see cloud, as a service models are there, big data platforms are there. Access to compute and storage is easier than it has ever been. Then we see the mobile coverage coming in. We have pervasive broadband everywhere, and future we are talking about 5G as well. So that means that wireless coverage and wired coverage are almost coming to be equal. The third thing that comes in is IoT and wearables. There are many companies working on smart devices for agriculture, for commercial space, for measuring consumer behavior, etc., etc. And these can be harnessed to create the situational awareness picture again. And the last one is the AI. This is a very vast field, and we can look a little bit at what it brings to us. But again, the space is a bit fragmented because there are a lot of things that we can do. There are a lot of things that we cannot do. We cannot make the leap to human intelligence in any time soon. But there are a lot of things that we can accomplish. So the key lies in figuring out what we can accomplish and using those to our benefit. So, what we see happening is there is an excess of all these technologies, and it looks like there could be another industrial revolution waiting to happen. So, industrial revolution is when the fabric of technology, the fabric of society changes, and we take one step ahead. And it looks like the time is ripe, starting with when we got mobile coverage. The time is ripe for bigger changes to happen, which is why it is a very good time to be in technology. I'm at the sunset of my career. I wish this had happened earlier, but I can always watch from the sidelines, right? At all the exciting things that are going to happen. So what is artificial intelligence? There are three key concepts that we need to understand and where we are at. So first thing that started in the space is machine learning, and these are supervised techniques. So we just take data, we make the machine train on that data. We assume that the data is good, which is one of the problems, because there are the data that we collect is actually modeling human behavior, right? So if the human behavior in a society has some flaws, the machine will learn that as well. And then that is what a lot of countries have figured out, that racial, gender discrimination can be biases in machine learning. So we've got to be very careful about that. And there are techniques that could reduce the bias, but we need to be very mindful. Deep learning is what is currently being used, and it is unsupervised learning, which means that you can just let the machine loose on the data and it will learn a lot of things. What is anomalous behavior? What is normal behavior? And it will figure out what is anomalous behavior, just because that behavior does not happen a lot of times. These two together forms the body of AI work right now. What we want to move towards is artificial intelligence and general AI to mimic human behavior. But to me, it is not anywhere near, and it is not a focus that we should have in the recent future, because it's our own brains that we are using to model this behavior, right? So think about it. It seems to be a loop. We have finite intelligence, and we are using that finite intelligence to model ourselves. Seems to be something wrong. I will leave it for bigger experts to delve into that in the future. I'm just looking at the application of this in a particular industry. So we have deep learning, we have machine learning, and we can use these to our benefit still. So what is machine learning? We are using data, and we are using a framework, and we are training a model. And then we just take the model and we use this model to infer something from it. So we take the trained model, and then the trained model behaves like a mental model, and it learns a lot of things from it to provide cues to the human being through this model. So what is it that we can do in AI? There are deep neural networks, which is the deep learning networks. They can, at this moment, they can understand the scene, they can classify and identify things. For example, there was a disaster in London where on the London Bridge, there was a vehicle that ran over the curb onto the pavement and killed a lot of people. So this guy, purposefully done. Of course, it was not an accident, right? It was purposefully done. So the guy came out and foraged into the crowd with a knife, and he killed a lot of people. So at that moment, it is possible to create an alert based on that occurrence. If there was a video camera around, and London Bridge is a very critical installation in London, right? So if we are able to at least protect our critical places like ports, harbors, we can prevent the damage. So the camera, if it could say that, if it could recognize anomalous behavior at that point, it could say that this is a pavement, this is a vehicle, and this vehicle is not supposed to come at that speed into London Bridge and run over the pavement. So it could have recognized that, and it could have alerted, and about 10 minutes, 15 minutes could have been saved in the rescue operation. So that is something that we are able to accomplish now. We need to go further and understand the relevance, and that is where more kind of networks need to be there. Dense semantic networks with knowledge bases where we can understand the relevance. And that's something we are not there yet. We need to do a lot of more work in the scientific community to help bring that to action without too many false positives or false negatives. Some real examples of what could happen is audio intelligence. There's a lot of audio that happens when there's an emergency call made. We could go into this audio and we could parse the audio for simple things that I want to recognize about boy in a red cap who happens to be lost or something like that. And we can get a lot of information out faster. So the key in all these things is that because the information is there, of course, if you had all the time in the world and you had all the resources available to you, you would be able to find it. But it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. You need to place it in time and space, and you need to do a search among all the information, right? So we have always done this, human beings, we have always done this. We can look at newspaper articles, we can look at all kinds of data, and we can sort of quite easily figure out this link. But to teach the machine to figure out that link is not so easy. And that's what we are working on. We do have some examples in the video space as well, where a camera can sense the appearance of a person. For example, if there is a facility that is being monitored, if there is a bag, unattended bag left, like in an airport or something, then we can recognize that by automatically telling the machine to look for this bag. Unusual motion detection can be done, which is the example I gave of a car running over a sidewalk. These are easier things to implement, and these are being implemented in cameras now. So the idea is that with all this video coming in, how are we going to search through all the video? How is a human being going to sit and sift through all the video, especially when something needs to happen? If a child is lost, for example, we need to act immediately, right? So how are we going to sift through all this video? That's why we need a search mechanism through all this video to help us to figure out where the child is lost. Because like in a fire situation, for example, the fire station, one of our customers once told us the situation is like hours and hours of boredom when they are doing nothing at all, punctuated by moments of terror, right? So in that moments of terror, in that golden hour, they need to have access to a lot of data, and we are at the forefront at software. We should be able to create this information, but it's a question of a value chain coming together all the way all the way from the um, from the um, uh, from the ground to the government, where budgets need to be put aside, etc. So this is what it's going to help us in the end. Again, all these things that we did manually, we hope to be able to do in an automated fashion in the future. Let me go to one more aspect that we need to be aware of. And again, this is a very fragmented area, very developing area. There are smart city indexes which tell you Singapore is first, Amsterdam is first, etc., etc. But there are many cities that are doing this in a smaller way to help the citizens. And the reason why smart city is important is because some of these components can be used by the police officers to tap the data that is required for them to deal with the situation. For example, video surveillance is important in maybe not in every area, but at least in critical installation. Why I pick video surveillance is because it has a bad connotation. It is more that we are interested in video-based security rather than surveillance. We are not interested in surveillance of the citizens for the sake of surveillance, but we are interested in maintaining their security. It can be done sometimes in anonymous fashion, but that is where the critical nature of this industry lies, because as a society, each society has to understand how much privacy is needed and how much security is needed. And we are all in the process of learning this. The problem is that there are always bad actors everywhere, right, who can take advantage of the loophole. So we need to tread very carefully. But these are all made possible by technology. Maybe there are small ways in which these will come into operation as we go. Maybe not in our generation even, maybe in our children's generation. Hopefully this will happen. One more look at technologies and how they transform our society. So the reason why I put up this chart is I showed a lot of technologies that are available for us to use, but not all this is in the same stage of development, and we do need all of them to come together in a certain way to make it happen. So the technology readiness and impact is measured by three markers. One is the technology itself, whether the technology has developed to a state of maturity and usability for a particular industry. Again, each industry is different, each country is different, each society is different in the way it adopts technology, but the maturity and the usability has to match the requirements of the industry. For example, 5G coverage or 4G coverage may be enough for a normal person to use, but it may not be enough yet to supply video coverage for a certain area for law enforcement. So we have to carefully watch where the developments lie as well. Cloud and big data is available in many spaces from companies like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. So that is reasonably secure. The next one that is catching up is video, because everybody is selling video cameras. The quality of the video cameras and the quality of the video that comes through is debatable, but video cameras are everywhere, and we can use the information for our security. Again, the highlight here is to make sure that we don't compromise the privacy and place this data in the hands of bad actors. IoT is a maturing space as well. In this industry, the critical development that needs to happen is the business case for the customer. It is secure. The technology is there, maturing very fast, but when you look at the value chain around IoT, it is not very clear who makes the money, who puts in the investment, etc. So the business case becomes a bit critical for IoT. The applicability and the ecosystem is specific to the industry. Again, we need to understand whether the applicability for this particular industry, law enforcement, has happened for any of these technologies. 5G is a critical one. 5G claims to have access, sliced access, network slicing it's called, sliced access of capacity across any network, end-to-end for a particular use case. There is a lot of hype in all these industries, all these technologies that we need to be aware of. Blockchain is one that has found use in many smart city use cases, because it can enable secure storage of documents and etc. So that is also a developing technology. All these together can generate a lot of use cases. So if a company or individual can identify how to bring all this together in a certain way for a certain use case, there is a successful technology company in the making. So this is my reading of the industry as it is now. Again, some of this is not Motorola's specific view, it may be my personal view. And that is the end of my presentation. So I want to leave you with this word, mission critical intelligence. And the meaning may be clear to you by now. Mission critical refers to the mission of our law enforcement officers in keeping us safe in a fire situation, in a terrorist attack situation. It is a very critical mission for us, for them to accomplish for us, and it is up to us to put software in their hands to help them get that situational awareness and intelligence that they need in the golden hour, in the moments that matter. So that's the end of my presentation. I don't know how we did for time. I think I was meant to stop at 45 minutes. I'm just about there, I think. I will open the floor for questions if there are any. I hope it is useful information. It may be something that you may already be aware of, but I try to bring my personal view to it. So I do hope it has been a useful session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. No doubt. Of course, it was very useful. You can put in all the technology details, but in such simple terms that for us to digest it in and how critical the data and how it is to be used and how we can have the deep learning, machine learning, AI integrations and all you have said very beautifully. And you made us understand our mental model and situational awareness details also so beautifully. Thank you so much for covering such an intricate topic in so simple and beautiful way. I believe everyone will agree with me for that. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. Like I say, there is no presentation without an audience. So thank you for staying and listening.
Yes, we do have few queries here. Let
Yeah,
me start it. Yeah.
yeah.
Narayana sir has a statement that in India, have we started applying AI and such latest technology for safety purposes? If we can highlight on these aspects, is what.
Yeah. So Motorola has a division in India, and we have people working with the government and with the military in Mumbai, in Bangalore, in Delhi. Motorola in India, what we have seen is three areas that has seen focus in recent times. First, of course, there are many systems, many new installations coming in metros, airports, etc., where mission critical communications or what is called push to talk, collaborative multi-party communication is needed. Push to talk means that you push the button and you talk and everybody in the talk group listens, right? This is the standard method of communication in missions, from military to public safety. Those systems are going in. There are various varieties of systems. There are lower cost ones, higher fidelity, higher cost ones used by the police in metros, etc. So those systems are going in. The second one is video systems, automatic number plate recognition systems, etc., are also seeing take up because we see that this can help in investigations quite a bit. Video coverage is of course there as well, but again the problem in the video is that how do you really use the data, who owns the data, privacy, etc. The problems are there. The third area that is coming up is in emergency call handling software, 112, 118, I don't know. We have seen systems going in where software needs to replace manual call handling techniques. So instead of calling in to the police station or fire station, the moment the caller comes in, we should be able to get more information from about the caller by location, etc., and have a software, modern software in the hands of the call taker to make sure that he handles the incident immediately. So those systems are also going in. This is what I know. Of course, I don't work very closely in the India market. I live in Singapore, but I do know that these are seeing take up, and we believe that there are some smart cities like Baroda, for example, some other cities in Gujarat where they're also working on IoT and other things to bring in the connected city approach. This is what I know about India, but I'm not very familiar with the market.
Great. I'm sure they will agree that you could clarify their query. Now, one minute. Let me just get it. Yeah, another question is in airport, CL airport, we are using AI for detecting unattended bags and doubtful movement passengers. Actually, we had one presentation from CL the other day, but it was related to smart city, I mean, like green energy. So I believe this is also used there, is what we understand. I think it will be there in most of the airports also, right? Detection of unattended bags.
I am not completely sure, but what we have seen is that video coverage is there, of course, at the airport. But what happens is the cameras that are used need to be very high fidelity cameras, sensing kind of cameras to make this happen. And I don't know whether all the airports and CL itself has introduced it. They have the video, but whether they automatically detect an unattended bag, I am not sure. Maybe ACK, if he's here, he would know. ACK is my classmate, so he should know. Chandrakumar Nair.
Okay, okay.
It was ACK's question.
Oh, it was ACK's question.
No, it is not my question. The complementing point that we already have a high fidelity camera,
Yeah,
and we have a software linked motion detection
yeah,
by unattended baggages as well as the passenger doubtful movements have been
Yeah.
detected through AI.
there you are.
Yeah,
So that's a very good use case and something that is immediately achievable.
I complimented with Shanthi.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah, I didn't get to that portion actually. Everyone is full of compliments. So, but since it's Q&A session, I thought let me go through the Q&A and then give you the compliments. So another one is, how about AI for obstruction sensing warning and avoidance system to mitigate accident propensity in high-speed highways?
Yeah. So this is where the smart city comes in. And again, I am not completely sure about the situation in India, but what needs to happen is that the camera and the speed sensing coverage need to be there on the lampposts, or they are called smart lampposts, for example. So the infrastructure on the highways and in the streets, each of these lampposts need to have a camera and sensing mechanism so that it can sense the speed and look at certain things. It is a restricted facility, just like in an airport. You can implement it in sections of the highways. So the technology is available. It is a question of connecting the highway to the required reliability. Whether that has been done, it is an infrastructure development thing, right? So some of these things nowadays are coming with the infrastructure itself. For example, smart airports, like ACK said, smart buildings, smart are coming in with the buildings itself. But again, the connectivity has always been an issue in such cases. So the other advantage of doing this for buildings, is example, is you can have the blueprint of the building immediately, right? So I read somewhere that when the Taj attack happened, and when the police commissioner went in and asked for the blueprint, they didn't have the complete blueprint of the building. So the blueprint of the building can be available immediately. So such things are possible to implement within restricted facilities. Communication and bandwidth has been a problem, but it's mostly a question of focus and investments coming in into the right places. I don't have a real good answer for the India situation again, but it's something that is doable with these qualifications.
Yeah, something related to the transport by Rahul Ratnakumar. What is your opinion about development in smart transport? Is Motorola involved in this field?
Yeah, so Motorola is very involved in the transport sector because first and foremost, Motorola supplies the radios to all the metros. So we are in that space. Usually, the contract is done through a bigger system integrator because there's electrical systems and this in place. But Motorola does have the vehicle systems that can enable this smart transport. So in case of smart transport, there are two things to take care of. One is the signaling itself, the control signaling, and then the coverage for the customers for Wi-Fi or other things. So both these things, we have in-vehicle systems that can enable these to happen. And we do work on metros quite a bit with SIs like Alstom and others who have a bigger play in that area.
Thank you. That's great. Next is regarding from Dr. N. Panikar. Is surveillance bound to centralization? Is there a possibility of its evolution to self-management?
That's a good question. So, in US, we have this example of a city, Detroit, actually, where they have this thing called green project. What they did there is because Detroit, there's a lot of crime in certain areas of the city, around 7-Eleven stores, petrol stations, etc., which are mostly unattended except by one person, right? So these people came up and said, I will put in the camera. I will give you space to put in the camera. You put in the camera, you maintain the camera, but I'll give you the space and then you help me support it, right? So this is kind of a private-public partnership. And a lot of these models are viable because in this case, the owner wants to be surveilled or wants to be watched, right? Because he wants his safety. So it makes a much better use case than a big brother approach. So this is one example I can give in this space.
That's nice. Actually, even here in Kerala also, the many people are using the camera, surveillance cameras, and police are taking their help, like private people's help also to get that support. Yes, now one, oh yes, actually you're flooded with appreciations, ma'am. So questions I have to just search and pick because it's full of appreciations only, really.
Yeah. No, it's probably all my friends being nice to me, that's all.
Oh, no, ma'am, it was great, actually. Yes, Santosh Nair has very informative. He says, appreciate the concerns on business case and investment in terms real-time modeling and response. How do you think the systems are emerging? Also, any challenges in technology interoperability?
That is a very deep question, Santosh. He probably knows the answer, but
anyway. But then we want it as audience. Others are there who require it.
So the key word there is real time, which is what makes a lot of things difficult. So if you notice the unattended bags and all that, there is a little bit of a lag as well. Of course, you notice immediately, but it is not to the microsecond. So when you say real time, it always means that it is to the microsecond, right? So the real time modeling, what Motorola is also looking to achieve is when you say real time modeling, for example, if there is a fire in a railway station and the railway station building is collapsing, is in the point of collapsing, right? And what you expect from a technologist, what you want to happen is you want to have a drone flying over. We have drones flying in weddings now, so it should be there in a fire scenario as well, right? We want the drones fly over and we want to model the building as it collapses so that the firemen know where to go in and know where to save the people, how to save the people. So that to me is an example of a real-time modeling. And I have to say that we are not there yet. And the reason is because it's not a technological reason. I mean, bandwidth in a restricted facility, you can actually make it happen. The reason is because we need to do a lot of groundwork on that building before you need to make that real-time modeling happen. You need to make sure that the standards around blueprints and identification of fire hydrants and all that needs to be done in this building. So standards needs to be developed for a building to be real-time manageable, for example. So that takes a lot of time. And, in standards cases, it's always a question of many things are voluntary. So unless those standards are developed to make sure you start with a baseline, real time is a bit difficult. Again, I chose an example which I am familiar with. Maybe Santosh was asking for something else, but this is an example that I can identify with.
It's nice, ma'am. When you set standards, I mean, just okay, it is not there. It's my question. Is there any standards for these AI applications and all that? Any standards set?
That's a good question. So there are standards which say this kind of an AI application is usable for this kind of an industry if it passes a certain positive, negative test. And again, people are just starting to set it up. Maybe in the medical industry is quite active in this space. But if you look at standards on a worldwide basis, that is not there. Each industry is setting up standards for themselves to be able to adopt these technologies, but it is so specific to the industry. So we are not able to go on a wider basis, but what is available is a lot of software is available in the open source space. So I'm sure companies will come up to develop these standards in the future, but I haven't seen any standards around it per se, other than what industries set up for themselves.
Okay, ma'am. Well, Faisal Mohammed is saying that we use push-to-talk communication feature of Motorola and also use vehicle tracking systems in UN peacekeeping. But integration of Motorola systems with other cloud-based solutions of third-party ICT vendors had been a big challenge. He requests your comments on that.
Okay, so Faisal, yeah, that is a good question. So if you want the real answer, right? All this depends on how these technologies developed. So originally, when Motorola developed them, right, so they spent a lot of money on the development, and a lot of these technologies developed from the military space, actually. But companies like Motorola spent a lot of time and R&D to develop this technology, and all these companies are commercial companies, right? So they need to make sure that they have a business in this space, and that is not a bad thing, because otherwise these companies would go bankrupt, right? So they to make sure that these mission critical devices, especially the hi-fi ones, it's not simple, because you need to make sure that the development of the UI, UX, everything is taken care of. So sometimes companies tend to corral their space, but it is not because of commercial reasons only. It is because we are not able to make sure that the same level of mission critical service can be guaranteed once you open the security, open the space for integration, because then the customer would need to take care of that space. So mission critical can only be said if we have control end to end. And that is the difficulty in this space. We need to bring in new technologies, but we also need to make sure that the service we give is mission critical end to end. And that's the reason why it is not generally opened up. But having said that, there are specific cases, especially with UN and people like that, where Motorola works with quite closely to make it happen for these customers, I would think. UN is a big customer of Motorola, of course.
Great. Yeah, one question from Vijayalakshmi is, any research on rail safety related to this?
Rail safety.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't seen, I will have to come back on that. Rail safety itself, I have not seen. Of course, there are examples that we use of derailment. For example, that we have seen, and IoT is coming into that space to monitor the track and things like that. But there are research published to say that a lot of derailments could be avoided if this track monitoring is in place. But that's a quite general answer. I don't have any specific examples. Maybe I can get back to you with the answer.
Padmanabhai, he says he was referring to the major crash in Karipur, the Air India Express carrier, which broke into 3 parts. And he just wants to know whether AI was not used in this tabletop airport. So that, I mean, if so, then we believe such an accident could have been averted.
Yeah, so this is where it becomes a bit gray, right? I mean, airports control towers don't have a lot of AI in the space yet, but it is not the airport again, right? The airport and the control tower is only supplying information to the pilot. So at that moment, I mean, there was fog and there was rain or something, and visibility was low. So it is really the instrumentation around the pilot and the pilot himself, how they interact together. So this pilot, he said he had received hours of training, right, on flight simulators, etc., to make these mental models happen. So we cannot say what happened. I don't remember reading the black box what happened, but definitely there wouldn't have been any AI there. I mean, the AI is still not there. The AI situational awareness stays at the perception level even now. So all we are able to do is put all the information in front of the pilot in a way that he can use it. That's where we are at now. And it has to work with the pilot's mental models itself, because this is what is critical about AI. It's not that the machine can do everything. The human being at the center is still the complete responsible person. So we don't know what happened there, but there was no AI. But things could have been better if we had supplied information in a more efficient way.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And you also touched upon the fact that yes, AI is not going to replace human beings;
Yeah,
it is going to assist human beings, right?
definitely,
Thank you, ma'am.
definitely.
Thank
we
you,
are we
ma'am,
are
for
much
that.
more smarter.
Yeah. Anyway, human brains are required, is it
Yeah.
what you have already found? Now, there's one interesting question. Mr. B. Baburaj says, what about the cost aspect of these applications in Indian society?
Yeah, so that is why each society has to make its own assessment, right, of where the budgets go and where we need to make sure we put the budgets, right. Uh, the cost is based on hardware and software and technologies, right. Um, the hardware, the good thing about technology is that there is a sort of cycle that goes on between hardware and software. So originally you do everything in hardware, then you turn around and say hardware is just hardware, we want to do everything in software because software is more powerful. And then we turn around and say software is still powerful, but it is centralized, it's not distributed, so we wouldn't need to distribute intelligence into the hardware. So these movements are happening and the cost of things are reducing. But the cost equation is something that is peculiar to each society and each industry itself. So how much of the money do you set aside for this kind of application? I don't have a real answer, but I can give examples of other countries where, for example, Singapore is a very small country, so they actually divert some of the money from defense into home, because for them terrorist attack is the most critical one. So that's an example of Singapore, and I'm very sorry to say that I don't have a lot of examples from India because I don't work in this market. But the cost equation is something very specific to a country. And we have seen that is why it is very critical that these projects need to be done on a very large scale. For example, when we go into metro installations in India, it's not that each company can go in and install their own. There is an overall SI who is responsible for the holistic system deployment. And for the more technology you bring in, the more you are able to bring in the multiplexing effect. You can move budgets across from here to there in a way that is beneficial to the whole system. That's the way we see it work in places where the projects are complex and the budgets are to be worked upon.
It's true. So thank you so much, ma'am, for taking up all the queries. And yes, I'll just say you had, there's a beautiful, everyone has given you the appreciation. You have put in a simple way the presentation, which is of complex applications. So thanks from everyone for that. And here comes, I'll request Mr. Radhakrishnan for proposing the vote of thanks, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam, for the nice presentation on the topic Mission Critical Intelligence for Public Safety. And also happy to note the statement, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. It is really true. And also you talked about technology how technology has transformed the society. And as an aeronautical engineer, I can understand, especially when I was working in ISRO, you can understand the mission critical intelligence for public safety. The topic is very, very useful for us actually. And we have been developing the software for our regular flight. So I can understand the difficulty in creating a software, and you have taken a lot of pain to present this topic to the public. And thank you, madam, for the presentation. On behalf of the Intersociety and especially on behalf of myself, I thank you for giving a nice presentation. Also, I would like to thank Mrs. Akila Gauri Shankar from PMI for the nice welcome and coordinating for the question and answer session. And also Professor Jayashree Santosh for introducing the speaker. And also let me thank Harinder Lal and his team for continuously presenting at the 47 webinar we have conducted, weekly webinar. It is not that easy to have a weekly webinar without fail. So I thank the whole team for conducting this webinar without any fail. And also I appreciate all the people who have participated, and thank you once and all to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Radhakrishnan, for the kind words. And thanks to all my friends who listen so patiently.
Okay, no, it is very useful, madam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And dear participants, there is one small announcement to make before we get to the next week's details that we'll share. Until now, we have been using the Zoom session, and thanks for the Zoom facilitator of today, Nikita Sajid from IEEE.
Sorry,
Actually,
I forgot.
no, sir, no worries. I just wanted to connect it with another thing. Actually, just wanted to inform participants that from next week we will be having it over WebEx platform. So just make a note when the link comes in so that you can join in a little earlier if you have not downloaded the WebEx platform and all that. Yeah. Now, participants, next week, that's the 48th session we'll be having on space exploration, challenges and opportunities. We'll hear from Dr. V.R. Lalitambika, Distinguished Scientist and Director, Directorate of Human Space Program, ISRO. Of course, it is the same timing, 6 to 7. So until we meet next Wednesday, that's 10th March. Goodbye to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Good night.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Shanthi. It's a great presentation. One of the greatest ones we had. Thank you for your time and the way you have presented.
രവീന്ദ്രലാൽ സാർ,
Yeah.
ഒരു ചോദ്യം ചോദിച്ചോട്ടെ, എന്താണ് നമ്മുടെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം മാറാനുള്ള കാരണം?
അത് VSSC-യിലാണ് അവര് they cannot use Zoom.
Okay.
അത് ശരി. അപ്പം അടുത്ത ആഴ്ച മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ അങ്ങനെ
അത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ.
ഒരാഴ്ചത്തേക്കേ ഉള്ളൂ.
നെക്സ്റ്റ് വീക്ക് മാത്രം.
അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്യണം സാർ? നമ്മൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്യണം?
വെബക്സ് ഒന്ന് നേരത്തെ ഒന്ന് പിന്നെ നോക്കണം.
നോക്കി വെക്കണം.
സമയത്തോടെ ഒന്ന് ചിലപ്പം
മനസ്സിലായി. ഓക്കെ.
ലിങ്ക് ഇട്ട് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പിന്നെ നമ്മൾ നേരത്തെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്ത് വെക്കേണ്ട കാര്യമുണ്ടോ?
അത് ഞാനും അത്രയും ഫെമിലിയറിറ്റി ഇല്ല. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചിലപ്പോൾ പറ്റിയേക്കാം.
ചില സിസ്റ്റത്തില് പ്രത്യേക പ്രോബ്ലംസ് ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടാക്കും. പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് മാക് ബേസ്ഡ് സിസ്റ്റംസിലൊക്കെ ഇച്ചിരി ക്രിട്ടിക്കൽ ആണ്. കുറെ അതിന്റെ യൂസ്ഡ് ആകാൻ കുറച്ച് പ്രയാസം ഉണ്ടാവും. അതൊന്ന് നേരത്തെ ഒന്ന് ട്രൈ ചെയ്ത് വെക്കുന്നത്
അതിന്റെ സ്പെല്ലിംഗ് എന്താ?
എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു വെബെക്സിൽ വേണമെങ്കിൽ IEEE ഒരു ട്രയൽ ലിങ്ക് വേണമെങ്കിൽ തരാൻ പറ്റും. അങ്ങനെ ഒന്ന് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും തോന്നുന്നു.
IEEE തന്നെയാണ് ലിങ്ക് തരുന്നത്. But they cannot use Zoom. So they want other than Zoom.
നല്ല കാര്യം. പുതിയ കാരണം വരട്ടെ.
Okay, let us try this. Webex also we will try. No problem.
Webex വളരെ പ്രൊഫഷണലും വളരെ എക്സ്പെൻസീവ് ആണ്.
ആണോ?
എക്സ്പെൻസീവ് ആണോ? ഫ്രീ അല്ല?
വളരെ എക്സ്പെൻസീവ് ആണ്. യെസ്.
ഓക്കേ. അത് ശരി. Zoom ഫ്രീ അല്ലേ?
Zoom ഫ്രീ ഫോർ 40 minutes ഫോർ ഇതുണ്ട്. അതിൽ കൂടുതലാണെങ്കിൽ ചാർജ് ആണ്.
അത് ശരി. അപ്പോൾ ഈ
depends on the number of participants and whether it is webinar mode or interactive mode, അതനുസരിച്ച് ചാർജ് വേരിയേഷൻസ് ഉണ്ട്.
The Zoom application we are using is slightly costlier. IEEE has been using that. IEEE is supporting us for this one.
Google Meet free അല്ലേ?
Google Meet free ആണ്. 1 hour. For 1 hour it is free.
അത് ശരി.
Pay more for more facilities. That's all.
Zoom 40 minutes free ആണ്. അതിൽ കൂടുതലാണെങ്കിൽ പേ ചെയ്യണം.
കൂടുതലല്ല, 5 മിനിറ്റ് കട്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ട് വേണമെങ്കിൽ another 40 minutes എടുക്കാം. പക്ഷെ അത് നമ്മളെ മീറ്റിംഗിന് ശരിയാവില്ല.
പറ്റത്തില്ല.
അത് ശരിയാവില്ല. അത് വേറൊരാളുടെ പേരിൽ ചെയ്യേണ്ടി വരും.
അത് മാത്രമല്ല, അതിനകത്ത് ഒരുപാട് ലിമിറ്റേഷൻ.
അല്ലല്ല, നമ്മുടെ മീറ്റിംഗിനും കണ്ടിന്യൂറ്റി എല്ലാം പോകും.
അല്ല, അത് മാത്രമല്ല, ഒരുപാട് ലിമിറ്റേഷൻ. ഒരാൾക്ക് മാത്രമേ സംസാരിക്കാൻ പറ്റൂ.
അതെ.
അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ
അത് നമുക്ക് ശരിയാവില്ല. നമ്മുടെ ഈ ടെക്നോളജി ടോക്കണൊന്നും പറ്റത്തില്ല. സിമ്പിൾ മീറ്റിംഗിനും ഓക്കെ.
പൈസ കൊടുത്തേ പറ്റൂ.
അതെ. ഈ കാര്യത്തിന് കൊടുത്തേ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. ഞങ്ങള് പെൻഷനേഴ്സിനൊക്കെ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. അത് ഒരു സിമ്പിൾ മീറ്റിംഗ്, നോ പ്രോബ്ലം.
അതെന്താ ചെയ്യുന്ന? ഗൂഗിൾ മീറ്റ് ആണോ?
അതെ. അത് ഇടയ്ക്ക് സംസാരിച്ചോണ്ട് കട്ട് ചെയ്ത് 5 മിനിറ്റ് കഴിഞ്ഞ് എല്ലാവരും വന്നാൽ മതി.
Okay then, good night.
Good night sir. Thank you.
Good night.
Sorry for the delay, small delay from my side.
That's okay.